Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and you join me. We're back here in the Mojave Wasteland, just down from Good Springs, to talk about some more Wasteland botany. So let's talk about some of the fruit that we can find and pull out in New Vegas. There's quite a few, and many of them are quite unique actually to the kind of desert environment here. So let's get into it. So we're starting with these two guys here. So we've got the fresh apple, and the main scientific name for that is Malus domestica. So apples are a common and popular fruit that originated in Central Asia and is now cultivated all over the world. There's 7,500 different varieties of apples cultivated, and specifically for certain purposes. So some of them are for eating, some are for cooking, some are for making apple juice, and even for brewing cider. Humans have been cultivating them for thousands of years essentially. So the apple tree itself is deciduous and it flowers in the spring, with the fruit maturing late summer or autumn or fall. They need to be cross-pollinated to bear fruit, so pollinating insects like honeybees are pretty essential for the production of apples. So just one more argument for saving the bees. One thing to be aware of, the seeds of apples do contain a cyanide-like compound called amygdalin, which can be toxic in large quantities. The fruit has a moderate amount of fibre in it, but actually relatively low amounts of micronutrients like your vitamins and your minerals. All of the ones that are there is far less than 10% of the recommended daily amount. So the saying that an apple a day keeps the doctor away might not be accurate. But they do appear in many kind of religious traditions, often playing the role of a forbidden fruit, such as the fruit in the Garden of Eden that was eaten by Adam and Eve. It's not outrightly stated in the Bible that the fruit that they ate from the tree was an apple, but generally people kind of depict it and assume that it is as such, and that's why the prominent larynx that most men have is called the Adam's apple. But apples do also feature in Greek, Norse and Celtic mythology. We can find them in New Vegas, although never from trees, so the trees don't seem to exist in New Vegas, but you can find the apples in inventories. So the Legion tend to carry fresh fruit and stuff like that. Traders will have them. Some of the trading caravans and things will have them, and you can also find a few in the lab at Rivet City and Fallout 3, which makes sense because Dr. Lee, before your dad came along, she was working on hydroponics and food production and things like that there. So interestingly, unsurprisingly, eating the apple as it is counts as food. So you get 1 hit point per second for 7 seconds, but this does it does change with your survival skill. So if you've got higher survival skill, you'll get more benefit from food. In hardcore mode, you also get -10 dehydration and -15 starvation, which is pretty nice. But the apple is also part of the recipe for trail mix, which is a really useful food item that you can make. So let's look at it here. It's going to be quite far down in the list, isn't it? Yeah, there we go, trail mix. So you need survival of 25, which is relatively low. You need a fresh apple, a fresh pear, pinion nuts and sugar bombs. And this gives you +3 radiation, although +2 again. The amount of hit points and things that you get does track with things like your survival skills, so just bear that in mind, that my numbers might look different because I think this character's actually got quite a high survival skill. But you do get a tiny amount of radiation. You get +5 action points for 30 seconds and +5 hit points per second for 15 seconds as a baseline. If you've got hardcore mode on, it gives you -150 starvation, which makes it a really useful food item to carry around with you, although it does weigh quite a bit. But something, that you can potentially make that will give you quite a lot of food for your money. So that's quite a nice one there. And speaking of pears, that obviously the other ingredient is the fresh pear. Pyrrhus species is the species of pear. That's the genus of the plants. There's again like 3,000 varieties, and they are kind of related to apples, so they are in the same sort of taxonomic bracket at some point, that the trees are kind of related. So like apples, pears grow on trees. They tend to grow well in temperate regions in Western Europe, North Africa and across Asia. And they are obviously used as food both raw and cooked, and they can be used to make pear cider, which is sometimes called perry. And the wood from the trees is actually really good as well. It's particularly favoured for making high quality woodwind instruments and furniture. It resists warping and it resists splintering, so the wood has a lot of utility, and I think for people that make guitars and sort of string instruments as well, pear wood seems to be a good choice for that, because it resists the warping and it resists sort of the effect of water, it resists splinting, so quite useful there. And Fallout, most of the details that we talked about with apples also apply to the pears. There's no trees that you can find them on, but they are found in people's inventories and in shop inventories across the Mojave, and again in Rivet City's lab. And the food and healing effects are the same as apples, and obviously the ingredient in the trail mix recipe as we discussed, so that's the only recipe that they're still used on. So now for the rest of the plants, you can find these all across the desert, but for easiness I'm going to head over to Big Mountain. So have I got Big Mountain transport up on there? So we're going to head over to the sink and I'll see you there. Right, here we go, we're back at the sink. I've turned all the voices off just because obviously all the equipment and machines around here are very chatty. But yeah, I thought we'd just come here because we've got pretty much most of the plants around here that we need to talk about. So next up we're going to talk about the banana yucca. So the scientific name is Yucca baccata, and this one is a native plant that grows in the southwestern US and northern Mexico. It is part of the same family as the Joshua trees, which you do also find across the Mojave Desert. And the name comes from the berries that this plant produces because they're shaped like bananas. You know, not the most creative, but it does what it says. The fruit can be eaten raw or it can be cooked, and if it's cooked it resembles sweet potato, and the flower stalks can also be cooked and eaten. So we'll harvest this one and we'll harvest this one. So in Fallout New Vegas, just like most things, you get hit points, and it's 1 per second for 7 seconds as a baseline, again scaling with your survival skill. In hardcore mode you get -10 starvation and -15 dehydration. Interestingly, it is a favourite of the bighorners, so if you are looking for banana yucca, check out the places where you tend to find the wild bighorners, because they are very fond of the banana yucca, so they tend to hang around near where those plants grow. In Honest Hearts you actually can use banana yucca to lead a lost calf back to its mother, which is adorable, so you know, that's something. And you do find them across the Mojave, you find them across Zion Canyon as well. And in cooking, the banana yucca is an ingredient in the gecko kebab recipe, so let's scroll down to G, except for some reason my scroll wheel decides it doesn't want to work today. Why are you being difficult? There we go, gecko kebab. So you make 2 at a time with this. You need a survival skill of 60, you need a banana yucca, a gecko meat and a jalapeno pepper. And when you create that, you get hit points per second for 40 seconds. Baseline is 1. You get +1 rads. In hardcore mode, you get -50 dehydration and -80 starvation. So again, a pretty good food item, especially because it doesn't weigh very much. So each one only weighs 0.3, and you do make 2 at a time with the recipe. So quite a good food item to make. The ingredients aren't hard to come by. That'll keep you going. But it is also an important ingredient in a recipe, which it's there. I actually do have the stuff to make it. It is a chem crafting recipe for Slasher. So Slasher is quite an interesting one. It basically kind of combines the effect of Psycho and Med-X. So you need 2 banana yucca fruit, you need 1 dose of Psycho, and you need 2 stim packs. So quite a lot of high value ingredients, and you also need a science skill of 50. And for that you get a dose of Slasher, which gives you plus 25% damage output and plus 25% damage resistance. Both of these effects last for 1 minute. So it can stack with Med-X to give you plus 50% total damage resistance, but Slasher does carry a 20% chance of psycho addiction, and also increases the risk of addiction if used repeatedly, which is the usage monitoring effect. So essentially, if you repeatedly keep using the same chem, then the game tracks how often you're using it, and once that level reaches the top, then it really increases your chance of developing an addiction next time you use the item. The calculations are all quite complicated. It is all on the wiki if you're interested in looking into the nitty-gritty of it, but just to bear in mind that using this item repeatedly does increase your risk of addiction. So that's kind of an interesting one there. And then next up, right next door, is the barrel cactus. So you can see these little guys. So it's Ferrocactus cylindricus is the scientific name. So they're kind of round shaped with quite deep ribs and long spines. They can reach up to 3 meters in height, or 9.6 feet, which is pretty tall. So they only begin to flower when they're several years old, but they can live to be over 100 years old. So these ones, they grow fast because this is a super advanced hydroponic station essentially. But they typically would bloom in April, and the flower wilts in May, and then a small pineapple shaped green fruit develops. And the fruit can actually last for a full year if it's left untouched. It's bitter and it's dry, so it's rarely consumed, but Native Americans in the area would use the fruit as emergency food in severe drought conditions. And the cactus itself is quite popular as an ornamental plant. It's quite easy to grow, but apparently has a tendency to fall over in certain situations because they grow based on the sun's orientation, which is interesting. So you can harvest the fruit from the barrel cactus, and it does count as food. So let's have a look. So you do get a little bit of reduction of food, -5 plus -15 water if you're in survival mode or hardcore mode. You get 1 hit point per second for 5 seconds, and -1 endurance for 2 minutes. But bear in mind both the good and bad effects scale with your survival skill, so you get more hit points but at the expense of even more endurance loss, which it doesn't really kind of, you probably would end up worse off for the tiny amount of food that you get from this, but it is a thing, you can eat it. But it is an ingredient in one cooking recipe, which is the desert salad, which we do use the hot plate for. There it is. So you need barrel cactus fruit, you need a Brahmin steak, and you need pinion nuts. You also need a survival skill of 55. And you can make this food item, and it's pretty good. So you get from 7 hit points per second for 15 seconds. And in hardcore mode, you get -40 dehydration and -80 starvation. So it's a pretty good food item to make. It doesn't weigh very much, which is always a bonus. And the ingredients, again, they're not too difficult to come by, so potentially quite a useful one. But there are other recipes that the barrel cactus fruit is used in. So if you're craving some Nuka Cola and you can't find it anywhere, if you've got honest hearts, then you can make your own homebrewed Nuka Cola. So you need, there it is, homebrewed Nuka Cola. So you need a barrel cactus fruit, you need a bottle cap and an empty soda bottle, obviously, because where are you going to put your Nuka Cola? You need a bottle, and you need a Nevada agave fruit, which we'll be talking about next. And you need survival of 30, which isn't too high, and then that gives you a Nuka Cola. Once you've made it, it's basically treated exactly the same as the Nuka Cola, the official Nuka Cola that you can find. So you get 2 hit points per second for 25 seconds, 3 rads, and you get +10 dehydration, so it does actually increase your water need, and it reduces your sleep need, so you get -15 on that. And if you drink it, you'll also get your bottle cap back, but once it's created, it's basically exactly the same as Nuka Cola that you find. So that's an interesting one. And the final recipe that the barrel cactus fruit is used in is one that we talked about in the mycology video when we were talking about the cave fungus, and that is blood shield. So very quick summary of that: you need the cave fungus and a spore plant pod as well, and you get 4 hit points per second for 6 seconds and plus 50 poison resistance for 2 minutes. So it comes in quite handy when you are dealing with Kazdors and tribals with poisoned weapons in Honest Hearts. Okay, next up we have got the Nevada agave. So we can pick that from these little guys. So agave utahensis is the Latin name for this plant. There are slight variations in kind of subspecies. So they originate from the southwestern US, so between Utah and Nevada and everybody else that's in that vicinity. And they have these kind of bluey-green leaves with the sharp spikes along the edges. And sometimes they do grow a stalk in the middle, which can reach a maximum height of 4 metres or 12 feet, so it can grow very tall. And it has yellow flowers and then produces small fruit capsules, essentially. They're kind of on the end of the leaves, so you can see where we've kind of cut them off. And it's generally cultivated as a decorative plant in the real world, but Native American people do use it for both food and for the fibre, including making blankets from it. So it does have plenty of utility for people in real life. And in Fallout New Vegas, you can find it across Zion Canyon, you can find it across the Mojave. It's got a slightly better healing aspect when it's eaten raw compared to some of the other fruits that we've been talking about. So it's going to be under N for Nevada agave. So get plus 3 hit points for 8 seconds. The baseline is plus 1 for 8 seconds, so just lasts slightly longer. In hardcore mode, minus 10 dehydration and minus 15 starvation. It's not part of any food recipes, but it is part of several crafting recipes if you have Honest Hearts. So in the mycology video when we were talking about the cave fungus again, you combine cave fungus, Nevada agave fruit, a brock flower and a xander root, and that gives you the healing poultice, which is basically better than the healing powder that you can make. I think I'm going to need to get a new mouse, guys. Come on. There it is. So yep, that's your ingredients. So basically it's like a better healing powder. So you get more healing and you get restoration of your limb condition at the expense of agility. Which is quite good. So potentially useful, but it does knock your agility a little bit, but you've got quite a low survival skill requirement as well, which means it's quite feasible to use. It's also included in the homebrewed Nuka Cola recipe, as we discussed, but it's also part of the homebrewed Sunset Sarsaparilla recipe. So basically everything's the same, except you need an empty Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle and you need a xander root instead of the barrel cactus fruit. That's the difference. And when you make that, you get a Sunset Sarsaparilla. So you get the hit points plus 2 for 25 seconds. No rads compared to Nuka Cola, because there's no radioactive ingredients in there. So, you know, that's potentially quite good. And it does give you slight increase in dehydration and no reduction in your sleep need because it's not caffeinated. So, yeah. So you can make your own Sunset Sarsaparilla. Again, this recipe is added on by Honest Hearts, so quite an interesting one. And if you're feeling a more adult beverage, then you can actually make yourself some Wasteland tequila. There we go. So Wasteland tequila, so you need a Nevada agave fruit, you need an empty whiskey bottle, and you need a purified water. You need survival skill of 35, and you can make yourself some tequila. So that gives you plus 2 strength and plus 1 charisma for 4 minutes with minus 2 intelligence for the same amount of time. Obviously, again, scales with your survival skills, so it tends to be, it's higher, you get strength plus 6, charisma plus 3, but minus 6 intelligence. You know, alcohol will do that to you. But you do also get a little bit of poison resistance for a kind of short period of time. But the downside is that you have plus 15 dehydration in hardcore mode and a 10% risk of alcohol addiction. If you have the Whiskey Rose perk, if you've got Cass with you, then you do get plus 3 damage threshold for 4 minutes. And it does mitigate the negative effects, I think, of consuming alcohol to some degree when you've got that perk, which is quite interesting. And if that's not enough for you, then you can make a large version, which is large Wasteland tequila. So basically the same, except you need 2 purified water and 2 Nevada agave fruit, and you need a higher survival skill. And basically it's the same, except, you know, higher kind of changes. So poison resistance is up, damage threshold is up, charisma's up, strength is up, and intelligence is massively reduced. And again, that can be adjusted based on your sort of survival skill, and if you have Cass as a companion and have her perk. The larger Wasteland tequila does also come with a higher risk of alcohol addiction at 15% as well, so just something to bear in mind. Everything in moderation, that's always the best rule of thumb. Real life as well, so yeah, interesting. So quite a few useful ones, which I like. I do like having some flexibility. And then next up we've got the prickly pear, which is right behind me here. So this is a prickly pear. So again, it's another kind of cactus species. It's not actually a pear, and it's in the Opuntia species. So it's just another cactus that produces fruit. There are quite a few of them. They're kind of segmented cacti with these flat kind of pad-shaped, I can't remember what the word is, but the kind of pad-shaped segmented cactus. They produce flowers which are usually kind of red to yellow colours, and the fruit does go by many names: cactus fruit, prickly pear, and there's quite a few other ones as well that are used for it. The fruit's edible, but has to be peeled very carefully to remove all the spines, because if they're not fully removed, they can cause damage when they're ingested and can cause problems. The raw fruit does have quite a high water content in real life, and it also actually has a decent source of vitamin C and magnesium. The fruit can be eaten raw or cooked, and it's used in candy and drinks and savoury dishes as well. The plants have also been used to treat wounds in both Native American and Mexican traditional medicines. It can also be used as livestock fodder to make bioethanol as fuel, and the thick skin of the plant can even be used to make a vegan sort of leather replacement. So another plant with plenty of utility. I think when people think of deserts, sometimes they think that there's just nothing of use there. You know, there's no food to find, there's no water, there's, you know, the desert means that it's dead, but that's really not the case. There's a lot of plants and animals that have adapted to live under these conditions, and by definition a desert has less water, so all these things that live there have adapted ways to cope with less water and still survive. So you know, there are plenty of resources in deserts, especially the kind of desert that you have in this part of the United States. So very, very interesting. So if you eat the fruit as it is, then you get hit points for 10 seconds. So again, you know, kind of slightly better healing item than some of the other ones. It also takes away 15 points of dehydration and 10 points of starvation. And it is used in a cooking recipe as well, which is the bloatfly slider, which hopefully tastes better than it sounds, because I have to be honest, it doesn't really sound that appetizing to me, but you know. So again, quite an easy recipe to make. 20 survival skill, bloatfly meat and 2 prickly pear fruit, and you get plus 1 rads and hit points plus 9 for 15 seconds, which starts out at plus 3 and again scales with your survival skill. In hardcore mode, this food item gives you minus 30 dehydration and minus 75 starvation. And the interesting thing to know if you have Old World Blues is that you can amass a huge amount of bloatfly meat if you're brave enough to take on the legendary bloatfly that's in the mysterious cave, which I'll show you on the map, in case you've never been in there, be prepared, because it's one of the most dangerous things. So mysterious cave is up here, so right next to the Forbidden Zone Dome entrance in the railway tunnel at the north, there's a little cave that's just called Mysterious Cave, and there is a giant bloatfly waiting for you. It's very dangerous, but if you manage to kill it, then you find like 50 bloatfly meat on it, plus there's a few normal bloatflies buzzing about in there as well, and you can use other plants in the salient green and here at the research station, the biological research station, to make a ton of prickly pear fruits, and that means that you can literally make so much bloatfly cider that'll keep you going for absolute days. So interesting thing to think about, but you need to be prepared for that fight, because the legendary bloatfly is not something to dismiss out of hand. The other recipe that is available is cactus water. So you need 2 prickly pear fruit and an empty soda bottle, and this is a way of making purified water essentially. So you need survival of 30 on these ingredients, and what you get is purified water. So once you've made it, it just acts the same as any other purified water that you find, and it gives you the small amount of healing over a few seconds, and obviously in hardcore mode you get -50 dehydration because it's water, so makes sense. Quite useful if you're far away from any of the safe water sources, which there are a few in Fallout New Vegas. You know, Lake Mead is rad-free, the Colorado is generally good spring source, Lake Mead, it's all fairly good, but if you're far from that and you need water, then this is an option which is quite useful. So really interesting. I never really properly explored the kind of crafting system in this game, and it's definitely something that I think warrants another look, because it's really interesting, and the DLCs have added on a lot of different things as well, which I think is really fun, and it does kind of make me want to do a sort of survival skill only playthrough in hardcore mode, using only what nature provides to survive. Really getting renewed appreciation for the crafting system in this game, so hopefully you guys are kind of finding that too with this. Let me know what you think. Have you messed about with survival skills? Have you done a lot of crafting in Fallout New Vegas? Have you got any favourite items? Let me know what you think, and we'll be back with some more fruit next week. See ya!